understanding how the federal government needs to be leading in bold actions and how states and other allies and partners should be investing in this technology. So as we launch the Celebration of Plan, I want to recognize these key partners behind me, those of you in the room and those online who've been key leaders in this space. So what we're going to do for this portion of the agenda is we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to start with my colleague King, and what they're going to do is introduce themselves, and I'm going to ask them as they introduce themselves, what excites you about the launch of the V2X deployment plan. Welcome, King, and thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. My name is King G. I am the Director of Safety and Mobility for the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. That's the association that represents the state DOTs in this country. And we are particularly excited because as the representative of these state DOTs who are key to the deployment of V2X technology, we're excited because the US DOT is providing a national coherent plan for how to move this technology forward. And we're excited because it creates that certainty and direction for the state DOTs to move beyond pilot demonstrations, pilot installations, to full deployment at scale to save lives. And we firmly believe that we cannot get to zero fatalities in this country without V2X technology. And lastly, we are excited because it coalesces all the stakeholders to lead and to focus on all the things that are needed to make this thing real. So we congratulate the US DOT for reaching this milestone, and we look forward to working with everyone on advancing this technology to save lives. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up, Brad Sturts with 5GAA and Audi. Thanks, Brad.
Hi, I'm Brad Sturts. I'm co-chair of 5G Automotive Association in the United States and Director of Government Affairs for Audi. And I think what excites me, besides getting to this point, is the fact that if you look at this group and the group before us, just the full spectrum of participants in this project to get this off the ground and get it deployed. From mobile networks to auto manufacturers to state DOTs and federal government, of course. It's really important to have all sides pitching together, along with those who are affected by the tragedies and the dangers on traffic today. We need to have this sort of 360-degree perspective to bring this to life and to bring the investment together. So now the work begins. I think now we have the door is open. We can begin to use the safety spectrum. We can begin to look for opportunities to do long-range and short-range safety applications, and let's get going. Thank you.
And next we're going to move to Steve Kusiemba, who's the president and CEO of the Institute for Transportation Engineers. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Kristen. Thank you, everyone. Again, I'm Steve Kusiemba with ITE. We're a community of transportation engineers, planners, professionals, representing a lot of local communities, consultants, vendors. We're really excited about this plan. Many of our members were involved in the development of it. And we're excited not only that there are goals out there for everyone to aim at, and as Brad mentioned, there's a lot of different stakeholders that are addressed in the plan. There's also a lot of different issues addressed in the plan. It's not just, here's the goals, now go figure it out. The plan talks about cybersecurity. It talks about certificates. It talks about wireless issues. It talks about standards. ITE is a standards development organization. So the plan covers a huge breadth and depth of technical issues and stakeholders. So we're really excited. We really thank the US DOT for their leadership in this, and we look forward to working with them to carry it forward.
And next, my good colleague and friend, Hillary Kane with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. Welcome, Hillary.
Yeah, so Hillary Kane, Senior Vice President of Policy for the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. You heard already from our President and CEO, I think what we are most excited about is that the plan exists. This is something that we as an auto industry have been calling for, as you heard, for a number of years. And so the fact that we are at this point is incredibly exciting, and I think will be a remarkable catalyst for what is to come in additional action. The other thing I will say that excites us the most is we are hopeful that this action by DOT will then spur the remaining pieces of the puzzle that need to come into place from some of our federal partners, including those at the Federal Communications Commission. So congratulations, we're so thrilled to be here and so thrilled to be part of the dialogue going forward.
And speaking of some of those innovators, I want to welcome Brock on with technology company Haas Alert.
Thank you, Kristen. Yes, my name is Brock On. I'm the Vice President of Communications and Public Policy at Haas Alert. I also have the privilege of chairing the Beyond 5.9 committee at ITS America. We're thrilled about this plan. I think on top of everything that's already been said so far, this really represents an incredible relic of collaboration. What we're looking at here is something that represents conversations that have been had, summits that have been held. It's amazing to read through this and see all of those voices having been heard. I think that what the USDOT has given us is a very, very clear framework of how to move forward together as an ecosystem using every tool available to us across the entire spectrum of technologies and tools that we have available. There are communities across the country today that are benefiting from this technology. There are lives being saved, and the opportunity for us to scale this fully and see this happen in our lifetime is really, really exciting. So congratulations to the USDOT.
And I promise we're just about done with the do-si-do. But we can't be done until the last couple folks. I want to introduce Elise Feldpau. She is the Connected and Automated Vehicle Manager and Innovation Lead at the Michigan Department of Transportation and also chairs the Mid-America Association of State Transportation Officials, MASTO's Connected and Automated Vehicle Committee. Welcome, Elise.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Like she said, I am Elise Felposh with the Michigan Department of Transportation, and I do represent a number of different stakeholders throughout the Mid-American region of the country. And I'm just so excited to be able to have this plan, to be able to reference it to our leaders, to be able to say this is something really to rally around. We have all known, as you've heard today, that this technology can save lives. It can make a big difference, and it can be incredibly challenging to implement a technology that prevents deaths when you don't have something nationally to reference to your leadership. So this plan is going to make such a difference in not only those states that I represent, but throughout the country and to our local agencies as well, something united to really pull us all forward. Thank you so much.
And last, but certainly foundational to this conversation, our colleague Jimmy Kim from Verizon.
Thank you, Kristen, and my fellow esteemed colleagues. I echo the sentiments of a lot of the colleagues here on the panel and also the presenters. Really applaud the efforts of the USDOT in actually marshaling all of these ecosystem players to the table. As we had sort of discussed earlier this morning, we talked about sort of converging all of the forces at play here, and we truly feel like this is an exciting time. Oh, by the way, I should introduce myself before I expound. So, Jimmy Kim, I'm part of the 5G acceleration team at Verizon, and I look after ecosystem enablement and strategy, as well as business development efforts in our connected transportation space. So, working with a number of you in the audience, for a number of years around our connected vehicle and V2X initiatives, I think that what's really excited me about this plan is really the active dialogue and the engagement that is actually stimulated. And the reference and the emphasis on desired outcomes is also exciting. And also, thank you, Dr. Hampshire and Shaylin, for calling out the different options for us to actually deliver on those outcomes. We truly feel that we are a player in the ecosystem that can actually contribute a lot of the foundational communication and connectivity infrastructure that will enable the innovation that we're talking about. Also, really, really excited about the opportunity to sit across the aisle and really actually have engaging discussions with all of the different players in the ecosystem. Really kind of be able to understand their viewpoints and look at the problem through their lens I think is extremely important to understand their challenges and also what actually motivates the different players from private to public sector, right? And through this process, it's been an incredibly learning experience. And the other observation that I made is that people are now willing to kind of step up and actually take some measured risks, right? Fail and learn from those failures and evolve. And I think that's really the one of the important success factors to actually making this whole initiative successful across all of the entire ecosystem. And, just thinking about a couple of the examples that, I want to refer to, I mean, Brad and I have been sort of pounding the pavement to really demonstrate interoperability across multiple dimensions. Our engagement with the US DOT and our friends there have really sort of sparked debates, right? Open debates, transparent debates about, what we can do together. And that's really resulted in just brainstorming on innovative solutions to a lot of these challenges, and also building new relationships, ways of solving these problems that I hadn't even, imagined before, right? So these are some examples. We just had a really great discussion with a connected vehicle pool fund study and the members there about implementing these standardized messages, right? People say that, there's well-defined standards out there, right? But, when it actually comes to implementation and really, putting forth some of these, these standards and rolling them out, there's plenty of variation here, and there's plenty of opportunity for us to actually unite and implement the information sharing in a standardized way. So really happy to be a part of this discussion, and looking forward to continued collaboration.
So we are 62 minutes into our event. And while we've been working on this for 20 years, is we heard earlier from our safety advocates as we announced the launch of this plan, in every hour in America, at least 4 American lives are lost on our nation's roadways. That is why we are doing this work. Many of us have been personally impacted. When I was the age of 16, one of my colleagues in high school was killed in a crash that could have been prevented by these technologies. So 63 minutes in, we're not just celebrating the announcement and launch of this plan, we are actually now instituting our Allies in Action campaign. Very similar to our nation's National Roadway Safety Strategy, when that launched 3 years ago, we asked those that helped us develop that plan to commit to an action that will help us implement it. Maybe it's just an idea. Maybe it's an engagement with a stakeholder group. Maybe it's a funding for a deployment or project in their home region. And these incredible 7 stakeholders here are here to announce what they are committing to on behalf of their organizations and their work. So what we're going to do is start with King and Ashto, and then we will go down the line, and they're going to share what they plan to do to help us implement the nation's first deployment plan for V2X. King, please come up.
Thank you. As you've heard from Virginia and from Michigan, as well as other states, our members have been active in this space for a number of years now. So in furtherance of the goals in the deployment plan, we, AASHTO, are going to continue to work with our members to support them in the deployment by refining the standards, by continuing the collaboration about how we do this together, coordinating the deployments across state lines, and really providing lessons learned so that we can really multiply the efforts. We have a built-in mechanism for this already. As some of you may know, AASHTO launched a new vision for transportation for the next era. And among the goals there are aggressive movement towards zero fatalities and to change the way we manage and operate our system. So there are a number of moonshots that point the way for how we achieve that vision. One of them is in Texas DOT, where they've committed to deploying connectivity throughout the system in the state of Texas. Another one is Georgia DOT, where they've committed to putting V2X application technology throughout the interstate system within the state of Georgia. And lastly, there is the I-80 corridor effort from California to New Jersey, led by Nevada DOT, to really pilot next generation communications technology for different applications. All of these require V2X technology. So all of these, plus other moonshots, will advance the goals and the milestones in the plan. And it's going to be helped by what is in the plan. So that's our commitment.
So for 5GAA, I think one of the first things we want to do is to further build understanding among infrastructure owners and operators, the road operators around the country at a state and federal and a local level, about the day one applications that can be put into place to have some really near-term benefits. As was mentioned earlier, I think this topic got slowed a bit because of so much focus on vehicle-to-vehicle communications and kind of elaborate traffic coordination. That will happen, and it's very important in the end, but we're looking now at a reality of having more of a need to address safety from a vulnerable road user perspective. So I think that's where I think the opportunities now to work with states very closely, work with cities very closely, to understand how that comes to life. Some of it's very simple. It's as simple as we talked earlier about bicycles being able to have a receiver to say, see me and I see you. So that's just a simple recognition that drivers who can be endlessly distracted are aware that there's a vulnerable bicyclist in the road ahead or coming up alongside of them, as we heard earlier today with Dan Langenkamp's family. We need to just build more awareness so that this isn't some moonshot, this isn't some science fiction technology that's way out there into the future, that there's meaningful technologies and meaningful applications and use cases we can put into place now that will allow the driver of a vehicle and eventually an automated vehicle to better understand the environment around them and greatly increase safety. But it's not just safety too. This is a technology that's going to be evolving and improving and adding more capabilities over time. So one of the things that really energized me is the recognition when we did a pilot with school buses near Atlanta, Georgia, that kids who qualified for a hot breakfast were able to get to breakfast on time and actually have their hot breakfast and get their day off on the right way because the school buses got signal prioritization and they weren't tied up in traffic and missed the first part of school. The other thing I would say from an Audi perspective is we definitely want to keep our eye on the human factor here. There is an enormous human touch point in all of this, and we want to keep that in mind as we begin to address what the societal benefits are and share that vision across the country. So.
It was nice to hear Brad say day one applications, because when you think about some of the many possible applications that are already being developed, many of them involve signalized intersections. We all know that that's a huge safety problem for us, whether it's pedestrians and bicyclists, whether it's cars running into each other. Signalized intersections represent an important opportunity for V2X to make a huge difference on day one. Now, many of those signalized intersections, there's roughly 320,000 signalized intersections in the U.S. Many of those are managed and operated by smaller local municipalities, cities, counties, and ITE's membership represents many of those smaller municipalities with the consultants or the vendors that work with them. So we have an opportunity to work with our partners at AASHTO who are working at the state level, and we are working at the local level. Together, we really cover a lot of the infrastructure owner-operator stakeholder community to really start making a difference. The signalized intersections always need upgrading, they need updates. You know, ITE is committed to help working with these agencies to implement parts of the plan, to help connect the local folks with the many technical resources that USDOT is making available, to help promote the availability of this wonderful grant funding that the USDOT is making available, and to help ensure that these smaller municipalities, who many times the city traffic engineer is also in charge of parking meters and maybe even refuse collection, and they don't have a lot of time in their days. If we can connect them together to leverage those resources and work with the state DOTs to further leverage the opportunities, that's what ITE is committed to really help doing here going forward to implement the plan.
All right, so I think the most exciting thing that's happened with the development of this plan is I've already heard from some of our member companies, some of the major automakers in the U.S. market about interest in convening conversations about where we go from here and what this means for us as an industry. And that's incredibly exciting. And so that is our commitment. We are going to convene those conversations. We are going to talk about what we as an industry and auto industry can do to meet some of the goals and actions identified in the plan. The other thing, I just want to share a perspective for you. Over the last several years, as product planning teams would get together at auto companies across this country and think about what technologies they wanted to put in their vehicles, if V2X was put on the table as a technology of interest, it was immediately taken off of the table because of the regulatory uncertainty that was out there. There was not a viable path to put this technology in production vehicles in this country. until now. And so what I'm telling you now is when those conversations happen about technology strategy and product planning and what technologies will go into vehicles in future years, when V2X is brought up, there's a conversation to be had about the when and the how and the where. So I think that's what's most exciting about what we're seeing emerge out of this plan. So thank you.
All right, I was really excited about this part. I got three big commitments and announcements today around this. So the first one is on vulnerable road users. Hoslert has the privilege of already working with thousands of fleets across the country, fire departments, police departments, tow truck operators, work zone operators. We are actively in deployment today with new vulnerable road user groups, including USPS drivers, cyclists, and school bus operators to bring digital alerting in a fully commercialized model to allow those fleets to participate in V2X technology. That's number one. Number two, just last week, for the first time ever, we successfully brought in data from 5.9 RSUs and used that to translate into delivered messages as digital alerts over cellular networks to cellular connected vehicles. So this is in keeping with the commitment to interoperability that we know is a top priority for the US DOT and for the broader ecosystem. Finally, last year, Stellantis became the first automaker to take digital alerts over cellular networks from vulnerable road users using V2X technology. And I'm excited to say today that in October, VW will be the next automaker to make V2X technology a standard feature at no additional cost to their drivers on the road. I wish I had one more OEM for you, but that one's coming out in 2 more weeks. So look forward to that. So great.
Thank you so much again. So I think for Michigan, what my commitment to with this plan is actually something that started about 9 months ago. So the beautiful part of this plan is that these conversations have been happening, that there's been multiple drafts. We've been able to see how things are moving forward and see how the bread is made as we move forward. And what we've done in Michigan is we've started to develop our own plan that's reflective of the national plan. So my commitment is to take that plan and bring it up to speed to be able to then share it out, not only as Michigan's plan, but perhaps even a model for how a state might be able to deploy something like this. We're very fortuitous in Michigan. We have 7 wonderful regions within our state, and each region is completely different. It's made up of entirely different demographics of people with different needs, different rural versus urban environments, and the use cases are different as you move throughout the state. And I don't think that we are exclusive to that in Michigan. Every state's made up of a diverse array of people and places, and the use cases that can be applied across the board will vary as you move forward. So it's incredibly important to have something where you've gone out and you've reached out and explained the different use cases, the different ways in which this technology can really make a difference in the lives of the people of those communities, and have it be something that's reflective of the diverse array of individuals that are represented within your region. So I will develop this document, we will finalize it, we'll make it publicly available so that not only those in Michigan can use it, but those in other states can use it as something that they could maybe apply for themselves as well. So we're very excited to be able to finally finalize this document and share that out, and hopefully that'll be very, very shortly after this. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we all sort of talked about the role of mobile network operators and actually providing the foundational connectivity that enables this digital roadway infrastructure. We're really excited about that, and I think we definitely have a role to play there, whether it's for value-added services we deliver to the end consumer, or the multiple verticals that transportation sector actually touches. We have a whole slew of managed services that essentially allow our customers and partners to manage this network, optimize it, secure it. We talked at length about security and some of the concerns around PII and also cyber threats as well, right? So we built our practice around these things, right? And really sort of building a world-class network that actually secures these assets, right, as they're moving through the network. But what I actually wanted to touch on and focus on today is, okay, specifically, what are we actually doing in terms of commitment to this V2X implementation plan? And we're really excited to announce that, over the last 6 years, we've actually invested quite significantly in the edge compute, the software, and the network to really be able to enable this whole concept of a networked V2X, right? And it's really exciting to see the industry sort of converging on this nomenclature, right? And it was exciting to actually hear it mentioned here as one of the viable alternatives and a complement to some of the more traditional ways of actually enabling these types of solutions. And so what we've done is we've actually deployed our multi-access edge compute infrastructure across 19 different metropolitan areas nationwide. And on top of this MEC infrastructure, which is essentially a rack of servers, right, which is deployed, co-located with our switches, we have developed an application that can actually enable and support the exchange of V2X messages in real time with an average of about 60 milliseconds worth of latency, which is really more than sufficient to enable the bulk of the use cases that we're talking about, with the exception of the absolutely mission critical, safety critical related use cases that are very latency intensive, right? So we're really excited to be a part of this discussion. We're really excited to really explore with the ecosystem, all the private and public sector partners on innovative uses of this technology. And we've actually tested and validated the technology with a number of our IO partners, private sector partners as well, in various deployments, smaller scale, initial pilots and first phase projects. And now we're at a point of inflection where we are taking those learnings and planning to deploy at scale, right? And so I think that this is it's a great time for us. We're committed to actually commercializing this solution at the end of the year. And on our way to actually doing this, we're actually engaged with the US DOT and the regulating bodies, as well as our partners, to ensure that we are addressing some of the barriers to adoption. We had sort of discussed interoperability, right, across the different dimensions. What does it take to actually deliver these alerts across the carrier network, the multi-carrier network, right? How do we interoperate between PC5 and direct V2X and network V2X, right? And these are all sort of what we would consider to be barriers to adoption that we're actually putting a reference architecture around, and we are in the process of actually demonstrating these capabilities. And I wanted to say that we have friends amongst us from other mobile network operators that have been really, really influential and have also taken a leadership position, right? So to the extent that we can get them on board, equates to success for everybody in the community, right? So we're committed to this launch. We think that it's going to be able to take advantage of the several hundred megahertz of spectrum that we have invested in actually building out nationwide. If you recall events from a couple of years ago, we've doubled down on 5G C-band spectrum. It's to the tune of about $60 billion to acquire the spectrum, and that's going to give us that bandwidth. And when we actually commercially launch the service, we're also going to be able to employ things like network slicing so that we can prioritize that V2X traffic over all the other sort of consumer traffic that's flowing over our macro network. So these are all things that we're just kind of putting some structure around in terms of a planned roadmap. And that said, I also wanted to emphasize that this isn't a one and done kind of thing, right? I mean, we have a technology that can complement direct V2X and can actually help to accelerate deployment at scale. But I think the theme in all of these discussions today has been really around the ecosystem, right? We view ourselves as a key component of that ecosystem. We provide the connectivity in the network, but we really need to be able to build and enable the open ecosystem using our APIs to integrate best-of-breed solutions, using those APIs in our platform, and as well as be able to interoperate with more of the traditional technologies and direct V2X related deployments. So just wanted to highlight our commitment there. We're really, really looking forward to enabling this ecosystem of public and private sector partners, and looking forward to a lot of the projects that we have on the horizon. Thank you.
That was too lukewarm of an applause to celebrate our 7 allies in action that joined us today. Everyone, these stakeholders represent tens of thousands of voices of members, of leaders, of community members. And so we want you to think about today and into the future as we launch this over the next decade. Will you join us in being an ally in action? There are many folks in this room who are not on stage with us. There are folks online. You have all been leaders in this space, and I hope we are growing new leaders as this comes. So as we close this portion of our event, we want to say thank you. This has not just been a 2-decade effort, but over the last 3 years under the Biden-Harris administration, we have worked really hard to listen to all of you, to lead in concert and in step with these partners on stage with me, and to all of you who help make sure that every day we save lives. So as we close out our event, we're going to go back down the line, and we want you to hold us at the United States Department of Transportation accountable. This is not just the launch of a plan. This is not just our implementation action, but we now have taken responsibility to not only take bold action, but to lead and follow through with these actions. So we have asked our colleagues, what can you do, or what can we do collectively as public and private sector leaders and safety advocates to hold us accountable to accomplish the goals in our plan? And we're just going to go quickly down the line, and then we'll close our event.
Thank you, Kristen. One of the things that we've learned over the decades is that there's a different culture between the IOO side and the OEM side. We are all, on the IOO side, all about sharing and collaborating, whereas we've learned that OEMs have a tendency to compete. And so we understand that, but I think in order to move this forward in a way that's going to be accountable and to build on each other's efforts, we would ask that the US DOT continue to lead us in an open sharing of lessons learned so that we don't have to repeat the lessons and mistakes of each other, that we can actually move forward together collaboratively. Thank you.
So I think one of the great benefits or the great features of this plan is that it's quite realistic, in my opinion. I think both from the 5G industry, but also from the automotive industry. I think the timelines, the near-term, mid-term, and long-term vision over the next 12 years is quite attainable. Now I think the request is let's stay on the course. Let's make this happen. And let's, yeah, obviously, as we mentioned earlier, there's going to need to be future funding, and let's make this a true mission for this country because it's also a competitive issue. We actually at Audi have cars on the road with V2X in China. As we've talked about endlessly here, we've been somewhat stymied with regulatory uncertainty here in the US, but now's the time to get moving on that, and let's keep on the path of executing this roadmap that US DOT has put together in quite a reasonable way, I would say.
The plan has some wonderful goals. Like Brad said, they're attainable goals, but we have to keep pushing for that. And in order to achieve some of those goals, we're going to have to continue to reduce or eliminate regulatory uncertainty. We just can't continue to have that lingering in the background. I think there's also, there are a lot of funding sources that are available out there. Many of them are grants. I think there's a lot of agencies, especially smaller agencies, that would like to see dedicated funding, not just grants that are competitive, but dedicated funding as well. So I'll ask, it's not really the US DOT, it's really more Congress that's going to take care of that, but maybe the US DOT can kind of nudge them along a little bit on that.
Yeah, so US DOT has done an incredible job over the last few years in facilitating this dialogue, and so my top ask is to keep the dialogue going. I think as we move towards implementation, as has already been noted, it's going to be critical that all of these stakeholders and even others are dialoguing about where we are and where we're headed and how we're going to get there. The second piece I will say was something my president and CEO mentioned earlier, but we are very interested also in integrating NHTSA into this conversation in a more wholesome way and getting some guidance and direction from them about how they see this playing out in the vehicle safety space as well.
So I'll say two things. The first thing is to realize that what makes V2X unique among all of the various things that the DOT manages and has had to do for decades, obviously for centuries, is the reality that the participants in V2X are all of us. All of us has a role to play in this. And some of us have more resources than others, right? There are participants in the V2X ecosystem like fire departments and, again, tow truck operators, construction companies that are neither technological experts in spectrum allocation, nor are they, well-resourced to have the latest and greatest vehicles. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to figure out how do we work collaboratively with those industries, with the agencies that are overseeing regulations in those industries to ensure that V2X is sort of a rising tide that lifts all those boats. And the other one, which is one of our values at HosAlert, is curiosity. I think it's critical that we remain curious as an ecosystem every year and taking advantage of every technology and tool and strategy available to us. The reality is that 10 years ago, you could not have made networked V2X a part of a V2X deployment program because, frankly, the network wasn't capable of doing what it is today. And who knows where we're going to be in 10 years with 5.9 technology, with 5G or 6G or however other many Gs we get between now and then. So the point is that this is a moving target. We all collaborate together. We're all going to continuously improve on this together. And if the DOT keeps the same energy moving forward, I think we're going to be great. So.
Thank you. So one of the things that I think is the most important, it's not a very glamorous thing, but I think it's one thing that would really be beneficial for all of the IOOs is to have really strong benefit cost information. I know it was mentioned earlier on in the previous panel that was up here, but that benefit cost information will allow us to be able to show that we would be foolish not to invest in this technology. Bridges, roads, extra lane capacity, they all cost millions and millions of dollars. And this technology, while everything is expensive, it's not remotely, near what it would cost to do some of those other roadway upgrades. So being able to showcase that this is how we should be spending the little money that we might have, I think is going to make huge difference from all of the different levels of the agencies.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to follow up on that comment, right, because I think it's really, really important, especially as we engage the community and some of the smaller municipalities, that are part of this whole process. My esteemed colleague made mention of the fact that a lot of these resources are tapped, right, and especially the local, really small municipalities are resource constrained. They want to minimize as much of the deployment friction and the budget, right, and the just the dollars that go into these types of initiatives. But I think it's a great point that when we talk about IT initiatives, right, and technology innovation, right, it's really, really important to articulate where this investment is going and be able to really drive that civic engagement with the community, and especially with the local municipalities, because I can't tell you the number of times I actually got in front of some of the smaller communities that are not as technology savvy, right? They don't quite understand what we're trying to accomplish here, right? So the next thing you know is, there's all sorts of sort of barriers, right, that are put up to say, hey, in order to do this, right, we need to consider security, data privacy, and we need to get in front of council, and then before long that, several months long project turns into like several years, right? So I think it's really, really important that we actually continue that advocacy and the community outreach and really applaud the US DOT's efforts to do this. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to actually carry that torch and drive that sustained engagement. The other thing is, I think my esteemed colleague also mentioned funding, right? It's huge, right? And so everybody talks about V2X as this chicken and egg problem, right? It is. Everybody's waiting to see, who's going to step in. And I do feel that it's the IOOs that really need to drive the critical mass before the industry actually jumps on board. And I know that things need to happen in parallel here, right? But in order for the IOs to really invest, right, funding is a big challenge right now, right? And I'm just being completely honest and transparent about this. I think you all know where things stand. We've come a long way with the competitive grants, right? But if you're not well-versed in that process and you don't have the experience, it could be a slog. It could be a real challenge, right? So really encourage the members of this audience and the industry bodies to really do what we can to explore new ways of funding and getting this to, some sort of a formula-funded grant process where this becomes a priority, I think is one, one area of opportunity. And then the other is really kind of exploring longer term how private sector can actually help, right? And to really fund these initiatives at scale, right? But we need that critical mass, right? So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today for the first National Deployment Plan on Connectivity. Thank you for sharing your commitments to becoming allies in action. Thank you for already being leaders and allies in action. And we heard you. We heard you that you wanted us to be bold, to be leaders, to be curious, to be collaborative, and we will continue to do that long into the future as we save lives with connectivity. That concludes our event today. We are going to welcome our stakeholders to join us on stage for a group photo because it has been a long, as John Bozzella said, bumpy road, but one that, as the Federal Highway Deputy Administrator would like to say, we are smoothing out from an infrastructure perspective. So on behalf of the U.S. Department of Transportation, thank you so much, and thank you.